Hope you are doing extremely well. The topic we are going to deal with this week is a business studies topic called the price theory. Now, the price theory says that the price of goods and services depends on the relationship between their supply and demand. Okay, and in this presentation, I'm going to explain to you exactly what supply is and what demand is and how the two interact to help a company to determine what the perfect price of a product or service in a market will be. Okay, so demand is the quantities of a good or service that potential buyers, in other words, people or customers or households, are willing and able to buy during a certain period. Okay, so the demand focuses on how many of the same product would people or consumers or customers or households want to buy at a shop or from a specific supplier at a specific time in the market. The demand or the amount of products that you want are determined by a number of factors. Some of them are quite obvious. Some of them will need some explaining, but it's fairly logical. The first one is the price of a product. If you think about it, if you go to the tuck shop and you see that the price for one brownie is R5, then you might think, oh, it's fairly cheap, so I would like to buy 2 brownies today, maybe 3. I like these brownies and they are cheap. I can buy 3 brownies for the same price that I can buy 1 Coke or 1 pie, so I'll buy 3 brownies because of the lower price. But if you walk to the tuck shop the next day and they've increased the price of the brownies, now suddenly it costs 10 Rand per brownie, you might reconsider and you might think, no, it's now too expensive, I'll only take 1 brownie. Okay, so the price of a product immediately determines your demand for it. It can either cause you not to want it anymore or to want less of the same product. Okay, if the price increases or if the price is very low, it can cause you to buy something that you wouldn't have wanted at first, but now it seems like a good idea, or you would buy more of the same products because the price is low. Okay, so a lower price always leads to a higher demand. The next one is quite interesting. It speaks about the prices of related products. Now, products always go hand in hand with other products. Okay, for example, if you want to buy a burger, you usually always buy fries with your burger and maybe a Coke. Okay, so if the burger is fairly cheap, you might think, okay, I want to buy this burger. But if the chips that comes with it and the cool drink pushes up the price too much, if the chips and the cool drink are too expensive, then you might not buy the burger, okay, because you can't afford everything, but you don't want to have just a burger. Then you'll rather have just a pie or something. Okay, so the prices of related products can cause you to not buy something, or if it's very cheap, the other products, then you might want to buy this product and even more than one of the products. The next factor is the income of the consumer. Okay, so people that earn more or people that have more money usually have a higher demand for products, okay, just because they can afford it. So if you think about the tuck shop again, if your parents give you 200 Rand every month to spend at the tuck shop, then your demand might not be to buy 50 cool drinks in a month. Why not? Because you won't be able to afford it. But if your parents give you unlimited tuck shop money, okay, so that you can buy anything that satisfies your wants and needs, then you might buy 50 cool drinks in a month from the tuck shop. Why? Because you can afford it. Okay, so suddenly your demand is higher because you've got more money. The next one is almost the most obvious one for me, is the taste or the preference of the consumer. Okay, so if you really like chocolates, if you've got a sweet tooth and you're addicted to sugar or to chocolate, then you might want to buy more chocolates. Okay, so you might not want to buy just one, you might buy 5 chocolates a week, okay, because you really like chocolates. If you're not someone that likes chocolates at all, okay, you're more of a chips person, a savory person, then you can go weeks without buying one chocolate because it's not your taste or it's not your preferred product. And then lastly, the size of the household. Now this one might not affect you, but it might affect your parents or whoever is in charge of your household. And I'm going to try to explain this based on takeaways. So let's say Friday is takeaway night and your mom or your dad or whoever makes the economic decisions has to decide if you're going to eat pizzas or if you're going to eat Burger King. Okay, so if there's only you and your mom or dad, if it's only the two of you, then it doesn't really matter. Okay, but if suddenly the household is 5 or 6 people, so it's your mom and dad, or there are 2 adults and there are 4 kids, then suddenly the prices of the products play a big role. Okay, so for example, if you have to go and buy pizzas and the average price of a large pizza is 110 Rand and you've got a family of 6, then the person that makes the decision might not want to spend 660 Rand on pizzas for one night's takeaways. That's a bit hectic. But if you think about Burger King, and let's say the average price of Burger King meal is like 50 Rand, okay, then 6 times 50 Rand, 300 Rand for a night of takeaway already makes it more attractive. Okay, so the person that decides might want to choose Burger King over pizzas just because of the size of the household. Companies want to see the demand for their products. So for every specific product, companies do what we call market research, and they try to find out how many products people will buy at a certain time. Okay, so what we do then is we draw up a table. We call it a demand schedule. Okay, this schedule is a table that shows the quantity of a specific product that is demanded by consumers at various different prices. Okay, so they ask the public, if we charge certain amounts for a product, how many products would you be willing to buy? For example, this is for a company that sells microwaves. They have their price, all of the various prices in this column, and they have all of the demands on this column. Okay, so you will see when a microwave is 2,500 Rand per microwave, then only 100 customers wanted to buy this product. But when they drop the price to, let's say, 1,500, then suddenly 400 people wanted to buy this product. Or if it's very cheap, 500 Rand a microwave, then suddenly 600 people wanted to buy this product. And I want you to notice something that I will continue saying is that the relationship between price and demand is always the lower the price, the higher the demand. Okay, so as price decreases, demand always increases. Okay, so you will notice that as the price dropped, suddenly the demand went up. Why? Because people would buy more of a product if the product is cheaper. The public always want to spend less money. Now, this table is beautiful, but if you really want to give a company an idea, you have to give them a visual illustration of the demand for a product. So what we do, and this is where you come in, what you need to do is you need to be able to use that table. We will always give you this schedule, the demand schedule or the table, and you will have to use that to draw a simple line graph to illustrate the demand for a product. Okay, so a graph is called the demand curve. Now, some characteristics about this graph is that you always have your title. Okay, so your graph must have a title. Keep it simple, just say demand curve and then for whatever the product is. Okay, so don't try to be too fancy. Demand curve for this product that we're working with is microwaves. Then something else is quantity is always at the bottom of the curve, or the x-axis or the horizontal axis, whichever one makes sense to you. Okay, so quantity is always down at the bottom, and then price is always on the side, okay, or the y-axis or the vertical axis. And then what you do is you take your table and you plot dots on your graph for wherever, for whatever is mentioned in that table. Okay, so for example, when the price was 2,500 Rand, 100 people wanted to buy the product. So you make a dot there where 2,500 Rand and 100 people intersect. Okay, and then when the price was 2,000 Rand, 300 people wanted to buy the product, so you plot another point there. And at the end, when you've plotted all of your points, then you just connect them, please, with a ruler by drawing a line. And you will notice that this line is never completely straight. That's why we call it a demand curve. Okay, but something that's very important is what I've said before as well. You will notice with the demand curve, it will always go sort of in this direction. Why? Because if the price of a product is high, then demand is low. But as the price gets lower, suddenly demand moves more and more and more to the right, because at a lower price, more people want a product. Okay, so what is important for you? To give your graph a title, to label your x-axis as quantity demanded, your y-axis as price, okay? To give the correct intervals, to plot the points using your table, and to connect the points with a ruler. That's it. Now, supply is just the opposite of demand. Supply looks at things from the business perspective. It's the amounts of a good or service that producers or businesses or suppliers plan to sell at each of the possible prices. So now they turn the tables around and they do some research, internal research, and they ask the company at various different prices, how many of one product will they be willing to sell? Now, there are a few factors that determine supply as well. The first one is obviously the price of a product. So if you are a business, you would want to put that price up as high as you possibly can. Why? Because you want to make the biggest possible profit. Okay, so you will not sell coffee for 5 Rand if you are able to sell coffee for 20 Rand. Okay, so if the price is higher, then suddenly you would like to sell more of that product, or you would be more willing to sell that product. Okay, so now with supply, you will notice that it's just the opposite to demand. If the price is higher and higher and higher, the supply is also higher. The next factor is the prices of substitute products. Okay, now substitute products are products that a consumer can use instead of your product. Okay, so for example, if our company produces fresh milk, they have to think, okay, customers will buy fresh milk unless it's cheaper for them or more affordable for them to buy long life milk. Or people will buy our fresh milk as long as the price is not too ridiculous compared to long life milk. Otherwise, they will just say, we give up, we're not buying fresh milk anymore, we are buying long life milk. Or if you think about brands, hey, let's look at Nike. So if people are willing to buy Nike, that's fine, but you have to keep the prices at a range so that people won't say, oh, you know what, Nike is way too expensive. I can buy the same sort of look at Adidas. So I'm just going to go to Adidas. It's a substitute product. I'm going to buy their stuff instead of Nike stuff. Okay, it's more or less the same, but it's cheaper. So suppliers have to go and look at the prices of substitute products before they think about their own price, because they need to be competitive and not push their customers away. The next thing is the prices of the factors of production and other inputs. In other words, suppliers have to think about how much it costs to actually produce the product. Remember, the factors of production are capital, labor, natural resources, and entrepreneurship, and all of them come at a cost. Okay, so a company shouldn't sell a product at a price that will not make them able to afford the resources that they needed to produce this product. Then another factor is expected future prices. So what this means is that if a company expects in the future people will pay more for their product, okay, then they will produce more of this product. If you think about restaurants, okay, so now in lockdown, they know that people or customers are dying to go to restaurants. Okay, they've missed the experience, so suddenly restaurants, when they open their doors, okay, might want to, or they know that people would really want to experience their service, so they might even push the price up a little bit because they expect a future, well, a high demand in the future. Okay, so then when they open their doors, they might be willing to work harder to try to get more customers in their shop every day, maybe push the prices up a little bit so their supply will go up because of this expectation of the future. And the last one is the state of technology. Okay, so if the company has an advancement in technology, then they will notice that suddenly for the same amount of time, because they've got newer equipment, they can supply more products. But if the company doesn't have very new technology, then they are not able to supply more products, or they are not able to supply enough products, or whatever. Okay, so these are factors that determine supply. Then, just as with demand, okay, a company draws up a supply schedule. Okay, so it's basically a little table that shows the quantity of a specific product supplied by producers at various prices. In this case, our company sells bicycles, and we've got a column for the price per bicycle, and we've got a column for the amount of bicycles that a business are willing to supply at that specific price. Okay, for example, if the price is 5,000 Rand, then the company will want to supply and sell 4,000 bicycles, because then they'll make a big profit. If the price is 3,500 Rand, suddenly the price is not that much, so the business might not be willing to supply as many bicycles. They will only be willing to supply 2,500 bicycles. Why? Because then they can use their factors of production for something else. Okay, or at the lowest possible price, 1,000 Rand, then the company might only be willing to supply 500 bicycles. Or if you think about resources, if they only sell a bicycle at 1,000 Rand, they might not be able to afford to produce more than 500 bicycles. Otherwise, they might start making a loss. Okay, so you will notice, or I hope you've noticed, that the quantity supplied always drops as the price drops. Okay, so if the price is high, supply is high. If the price is low, supply. Then we've got our supply curve, which is very similar to the demand curve. It has a heading, keep it simple, supply curve for the product. Quantity is at the bottom here, price is on the side, and then you use your table from the previous slide or your supply schedule, you plot your points and you connect them with a line. And something that I want you to notice is that the supply curve, it's a curve because it's never just a straight line, okay, will always move somewhere in that direction. Why? Because if price goes up, then supply also goes up. If price is low, then supply is low. Sort of thing that I want to discuss with you is what we call market equilibrium. Now, market equilibrium is when things are equal. It's in the name. Okay, so market equilibrium is when the quantity demanded by consumers is equal to the quantity supplied by producers. So if you determine the demand for a product at different prices and the supply for a product at different prices, okay, the price where supply and demand is the same, that's where your market is in equilibrium. That's where every single product that is supplied will actually be bought. Okay, so that's sort of like the perfect price that businesses should aim for. And we call this the equilibrium price. This is a term that you need to. Sometimes, while there's only one equilibrium price, all of the prices above equilibrium price means that supply will be higher than demand. Okay, why? Because people want cheaper products and businesses want more expensive products. So the moment when you go past that price that is perfect for buyers and sellers, then your suppliers will supply bicycles that will not be bought. Okay, so you will have an excess supply. If the price is lower than the equilibrium price, okay, lower than the perfect price, then more people would want it, then businesses would be willing to sell it. Okay, why? Because businesses doesn't want to sell products at a low price, but people really want to buy products at a low price. So then you will have an excess demand. This will make more sense. Example. Okay, so let's look at the demand and supply of potatoes in the market on a given day. So here's a demand and supply schedules. It's the same thing as the previous schedules. Okay, but now you've got a price column, price per kilograms of potatoes, and you've got a demand column and a supply column. Okay, so if it's 2 Rand per kilogram, which is fairly cheap, then you will see that the demand is 400 kilograms are demanded, but 0 kilograms are supplied. Suppliers don't want to sell, or they're not willing to sell potatoes at 2 Rand a kilogram. Okay, so you will see, what is this? Excess demand. There's more demand than supply. At 3 Rand per kilogram, the demand drops a little bit because the price gets higher, so demand is lower, but the supply increased to 100 kilograms. Why? Because as price goes up, supply goes up. Then you'll notice at 5 Rand per kilogram, okay, your demand and supply is equal. Okay, the amount of potatoes that people are willing to buy at 5 Rand per kilogram is 250 kilograms, and producers are willing to supply 250 kilograms. So there, your market is in equilibrium. Why? Because demand equals supply. Everything below equilibrium price, so all of these prices that is lower than the equilibrium price, you will see that demand is higher than supply. So this is an excess demand. And at all of the prices above equilibrium price, you will see that supply is more than demand, so that's excess supply. And then lastly, there's a curve for supply and demand. Okay, so we put the two together and we give it a title. So you say the supply and demand curve for what? For potatoes on a given day. Quantity is still at the bottom. Price, look here, I said Rand per kilogram because now it's the price per kilogram, is still on the side. Now what you do is you take your table from the previous slide and first plot the demand points. Okay, so look at 2 Rand per kilogram. They wanted to buy 400 kilograms, and you go and you make that plot, and you make all of your plots, and then you connect the dots. That's your demand curve, and you make it one specific color, and you make a little key. Okay, so you say the blue color is demand, so that we know. Or you can make a little D here to say this is your demand curve. Then you take the supply column, and you said at 2 Rand per kilogram, 0 people wanted to, well, 0 kilograms would have been supplied. You plot that point and you plot all of the other points in that column and you connect the dots. Okay, so this is your supply line. You make it a different color and then you write in your key. The red line is supply, or you can make a little S here to say this is the supply line. Can you see the supply line always sort of goes up and the demand line always sort of goes down? Then you must be able to draw this graph, by the way. Then you must be able to indicate where the market is in equilibrium. And that will be where demand equals supply. So in other words, the bullseye of this graph, where the two cross, that is your market equilibrium here. At 5 Rand per kilogram, 250 kilograms will be demanded and supplied. That's your market equilibrium. Anything below that price, demand is more than supply. So you've got excess demand. Everything above that price, supply is more than demand. So you've got excess supply. What do you need to be able to do to answer definitions? Give me the factors that determine supply and demand. Draw your graphs.